Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Melotone Amps and
Valves and More.
And today we're going to do a joint episode. So this is Tube Lab number 231. Wow, 231.
Yeah.
That's crazy. In fact, I was checking our videos and we've got over 500 videos between both channels. Anyways, time flies. And it's going to be Melotone Amps number 12.
And that's right, we're doing another dual video.
So we got a lot of things to talk about, but everybody is going to join in for the first half, and then we're going to break off and we'll do specific content for each one of the channels. And today we're primarily talking about the universal phono preamp. But we've got a lot of other interesting things to talk about, so let's just get started. First, caution everyone, electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. Now, we're actually using, for the first time ever, we're using a teleprompter, so Charles has to, has to get used to leading ahead for us. So, I'm happy to report that test builders have successfully finished their kits and many of them have placed reviews in the store. Now, there are some test builders who are just catching up, and we still want to hear from you guys. Every test builder who's ever built a kit, going way back to our very, very first kit, have contributed to improving the kits overall. Now, we don't always follow every single suggestion, but usually we of course consider every suggestion from the test builders, and the ones that we can apply we will incorporate into the products, either the existing lineup or into future lineups. So the feedback has just been universally positive. There's no significant build issues. And so it's time to release the kit to everyone who wants one. And here's some of the review comments.
Yeah, we've been getting some really great ones.
Why don't you start, Charles, with the first one?
Okay, so the sound is tangible. That is the best word to describe it. There were times when I was listening to the music that I felt I could reach out and grab the instruments around me. And I think that's just really telling. That's what we like to hear in our own listening room here. If you close your eyes, you want to imagine that the musicians are playing right in front of you.
Yeah, tangible is actually a new word. I think we mentioned it in a summary of reviews when we first started getting reviews in, and I like it a lot because it captures something. It's a non-musical descriptor, but it gives you sort of a sense for what people are hearing and what they're feeling. Mm-hmm. Here's a short one. This kit just blew me away. The detail was exceptional. The noise floor was very low with no discernible hum, and top to bottom was crystal clear and articulate. Yeah, and that's not something you normally actually hear people talking about vinyl systems as being crystal clear and articulate. And what that's saying is that the circuit itself, the design of the circuit, the tubes that it uses are giving us that clarity. And we'll talk a little bit more when we split off. We're going to have a longer video for MTA viewers, and we're going to talk a little bit about the secrets of why the phono preamp sounds as good as it does. Mm-hmm. What's next, Charles?
Well, the next one is stage width and depth were excellent, with great layering of the musicians and their instruments, and dynamics were much improved over what I'm used to. And again, this is something that we experience, being able to pick out an individual instrument or a musician doing something in particular and just focusing in on that, because it's not all muddied, it's not all mixed in together. You can actually pick out the bass line or pick out somebody tapping a cymbal in the background. It's incredible.
Yeah, in fact, I follow Paul at PS Audio because he's a designer, an audio business owner, a manufacturer, audiophile of many years, many decades. And he was talking about this just the other day. He does a daily blog. So if you're interested in little nuggets about, I mean, sometimes he's just talking about some product he wants to vlog to you, but most of the time he's just talking about the hobby.
Nuggets of wisdom gathered over many years.
Yeah. And the other day he was talking about how a really great system will give you that definition that allows you to be able to focus on let's say the pluck of a bass string. And at the same time, you can sort of bring your ear and brain focus into that moment, those harmonics off of the pluck, but at the same time you're hearing the whole picture. So you can sort of go back a little bit and listen to the entire jazz ensemble, or you can focus a little bit more on the pluck of that string. And when I'm listening critically, of course, I'm listening to everything. I want to hear all the pluses and minuses of what we're hearing. We spend 1/3 of our time designing a kit. We spend 1/3 of our time critically listening to it, and we spend 1/3 of our time tweaking the kit and getting everything organized. In fact, in the next video for MTA, we'll be talking about the coming headphone kit and that next stage of getting it into production. So, but we spend a full third of our design time actually just listening.
Yeah,
it sounds like a really tough job, and it is, but somebody has to do it. Okay, what's next? The difference between my previous system's sound and now was literally night and day. And yeah, I mean, when we designed the phono preamp, I had brought in over the years so many phono preamps, and they all just sounded so bad. It was the beginning actually of basically going pro as a designer. Was the desire to bring good sounding, affordable sound to audiophiles, who just didn't have that $10,000 budget for a preamp. And that's a real thing. Audiophiles with money can spend $100,000 on a system. But if you're on a budget and you want great sound, you can build it yourself for a fraction of that price. What's next, Josh?
Okay, well, I really like this one. The whole project was one huge, fun learning experience. I've done one other tube DIY kit and it turned out great. This kit was on a whole new level.
Yeah, I mean, I go way back when I was a young teenager and a wannabe audiophile. People don't become audiophiles instantly. They desire to become one, and then eventually you have the knowledge and the equipment. But my very first kit that I built when I was, I think, 14 years old was a Heathkit preamplifier. And back in the day, Heathkit preamplifier was like everything. It had 2 phono inputs. It had tape monitors, tape deck 1, tape deck 2 monitors. It was, it had literally everything in it. It was a fairly complex kit. But I had an incredible amount of fun. And when I first thought, well, I think I'd like a kit business, I thought, I want to capture the fun I had building that Heathkit all those years ago. Heck, I think it's almost 50 years ago. Almost half a century. But that's what Heathkit was about. They were about great sound at a reasonable price. Well, they did a lot of different kinds of kits, but I was really interested in the audio stuff that they had. Great sound at an affordable price, and they wanted you to have fun building it so that you would come back.
And we want you to have fun too.
Okay, up next is, I highly recommend watching all of the videos first, then watch them again as you build. Questions will be answered that this is behind the camera, so I can't read it.
That you have along the way because you've already looked ahead. And we recommend this with each one of the videos right at the start, to watch the whole video first and then go back through and do the build, because it's hard sometimes to get things out in the right order. And, you know, even as we're building things, we'll discover stuff along the way that might be a better way of doing it. So it's just good to get ahead. It helps you avoid issues, and helps you have a little more fun with the build.
Okay, so a big thank you to the test builders that have put reviews in the store. I'll put a link below both videos so that you can actually just drop in on the full reviews. They're all informative. They're all from a unique perspective of each one of the builders. And the reviews are great because they almost always talk quite a bit about the build process and, you know, their experience, and also the listening experience of the new phono preamp, because this is the sound of this is so different than what almost anybody has ever heard. And those secrets are going to come in a minute when we switch over. The MTA viewers are going to have to listen to us yammering on about that. Actually, we're going to try to do that in less than a minute, because we want to spend time talking about
this guy over here.
Yeah. So the new headphone power amp. It's a stereo power amp. So it's not like anything you've ever seen before. I don't think there's probably been something on the market like it, but it's going to be fairly unique because it's a headphone system. So it's going to be a component-based headphone system in which you need a high-quality preamp to drive a power amp. Mm-hmm. And
we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. And for everybody over at Tube Lab, we're going to take a look at some really cool tubes over here.
Yeah, Charles found a very rare 6SL7 that's got a couple of numbers. Tung-Sol made it, and
we'll talk about it a bit more in a bit. Let's not spoil it right now.
Yeah, so that'll be what we do over in Valves and More. And yeah, it's just an amazing sounding tube, and we have two of them. Okay. One matched pair. So
that's it.
That's it. So through the magic of editing, everybody's going to be on their main program in just a second. Well, welcome back to Tube Lab viewers.
In the lab with Tube Lab.
A familiar sight, hopefully. And Charles, you've got these unique Tung-Sols.
Yeah, okay, so we had these plugged in the last section into our phono preamp because we were actually clearing these last night while we were doing our usual listening session. That's what these red checks are on here. And these are really interesting tubes. I found them in our assorted pile of 6SL7 tubes while I was going through and clearing things last week. And just take a look at the rigidity of the structure that's in here. We've got an extra top mica. We have extra support rods.
When you say extra top mica, what do you mean?
So this disc that's at the top here, that's acting as sort of a vibration damper. That's bracing everything inside here against the whole outer glass portion. And that's commonly a sight that you see in tougher built industrial style tubes or military tubes.
Or really big power tubes like some of the KT-88s will have it.
Yeah, exactly. And this plate structure is actually a later plate structure that Tung-Sol used. The much earlier one was sort of a really small round plate with a single wing off the side. And this is very reminiscent of something like a 12AX7, 12AT7, 12AU7. And they had them tight together, they had them fairly low, and they had them braced very well to help with the microphonics.
It also reminds me of the RCA Red Bass series.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The 5600 tubes. But was a premium. Actually, RCA introduced them for very similar reasons that Tung-Sol developed this one. In fact, you've got the data sheet right here.
Yeah, so let's pull that up. So now these tubes are labeled as 6SL7s, but I've done my research on them and they are absolutely the 6188 type based off of the build. It's possible that they labeled them as 6SL7s for filling particular military contracts if that's what they were calling for. But you'll see up here...
Or they released them to some domestic consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. But you'll see up here they're also labeled as 6188s, which is the particular designation for this type. But Tung-Sol also made other premium 6SL7s under the 6SU7 number as well.
And we see the WGT on the end. And we see that also on other mil-spec tubes as well. And of course, a number like 6188 is a mil-spec number.
Yeah, or industrial number, typically. And you'll see they even call it a premium tube right here. So they'll go into more detail about what this was meant for, but let's just take a look at the bottom section here. You can pause and read through all of this if you want, or you can find the data sheet online yourself. But take a look at what it says. So the 6188 or 6SU7 WGT is especially suited for use in military and industrial airborne equipment, which may be subjected...
You're losing your focus.
Sorry, which may be subjected to severe shock and vibration. And yeah, I mean, based off the design and the build for it, yeah, it's going to be able to handle some shocks. I was joking with Dad earlier that we can strap this to the front of a missile and I bet it would survive.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit in here about how they're actually balanced at the factory. So factory matched sections, because these are, of course, twin triodes, two tubes within one envelope.
For current, transconductance, amplification factor, all of it.
And what's the date of this data sheet? How old are these tubes?
Let's take a look down here. 1957.
Wow, January the 1st.
Yeah.
And there's so the data sheet is actually quite extensive. Given the nature of the tube, that makes sense. And
sorry about the focus here.
Yeah, if our camera's not focused on something with a line on it or a shape, it goes crazy. So.
Yeah. And you can see they even included schematics in here. There's another one underneath this about the test jigs that they use for checking the balance on these tubes. And it's incredible to see that these days, that they included the schematics for the circuits themselves. And it just shows the level of quality that they were aiming for with these.
Well, Tung-Sol was a terrific American manufacturer. They made high-quality tubes. Unfortunately, they didn't do the volume that RCA, GE, and Sylvania did. So they're fairly rare tubes. And even though we have tens of thousands of tubes in our little warehouse, we only have 2 of these.
Yeah, it's the first time we found them.
And thanks to the specification, the factory selected specifications, the 2 we had were really close. They're almost an exact match. And they're testing right at new old stock.
Well, they're testing above it on our testers. But testing probably around new old stock for what we would normally expect the higher gain military tubes to test at, which of course these are military tubes.
Yeah, so we only have 2 in the store, unfortunately. So as always, it's first come, first served. I wish we had dozens of these to sell, but we don't.
Yeah, and we've put them in there as used tubes. It's possible that they're actually new old stock. They do have a bit of marking on the base, which isn't uncommon with a loose tube whenever it's been bouncing around. But they're testing like new old stock. The chrome is beautiful on them. They're perfectly dead quiet in microphonics and noise.
I think the likelihood is that at least one of them is probably a military pull. So what happened with a lot of military equipment is that there was a requirement to have it ready to go for action if it was called into service. But a lot of military equipment was never basically used. It sat on a shelf or in a warehouse or in a piece of equipment.
If it was lucky, it was maybe turned on every couple of years and checked to make sure it was still running.
But basically you end up with essentially a brand new tube that has had an installation, but maybe a couple of hours of service life. So that's how you end up with a really high testing, almost new looking, but not quite new looking tube. So rather than cost these out as, new old stock when they're really used, we just call them used and we price them as used.
Yeah, so somebody gets a deal and some great tubes. And speaking of great tubes, we've got some more of a great 12AX7 in. Let's go take a look at them.
Okay, well, and what came in? More Matsushita 12AX7. And until Charles discovered these, we were really pulling out our hair trying to find available high quality vintage 12AX7s that we could find new old stock.
That were low noise, sounded great, tended to not be microphonic, and this checks all the boxes.
Yeah, and when you first discovered them, you realized, wait a minute, those look a lot like a real UK vintage Mullard. And you can see the hole in the side of the plate. That's the giveaway. And it turns out Matsushita made these on Mullard Philips equipment. Quite a few, not a lot, but quite a few Japanese tubes were made on equipment that came over from Mullard and from Philips. Philips owned Mullard. So we're not sure who actually manufactured the equipment, whether the parent company, Philips, did, or if Mullard took charge of manufacturing equipment. I think as far as factory size and square footage and volume was concerned, Mullard was bigger.
Oh, absolutely.
Than Dutch Philips, at least their actual home plants. Heerlen was the main plant for Philips, but they own plants all around the world, including in Canada. And Philips was just absolutely huge. Anyways, we're going to put the new old stock ones on sale. We actually, even though we still have quite a few in stock, we've run out of new old stock boxes. They just don't.
They don't survive, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we'll put them in a generic box for everyone. But if you're looking for a 12AX7 that has a nice touch of warmth in the mid-range, and sounds a lot like one of the greatest 12AX7s ever made, the Mullard version. Now, we're talking about the vintage Mullard version. There are a lot. It's probably one of the most faked and copied tubes out there, so watch out. Not the Matsushita. Nobody, as far as I know, has ever copied the Matsushita.
No.
But the Mullards, oh my God. Everybody sticks a label on it, a Mullard label on it, and it turns out to be a Chinese or Eastern European or a Russian tube.
In my opinion, I would actually take a Matsushita over a vintage Mullard any day, just because they tended to have much lower noise floors, lower microphonics, and sound basically the same in terms of the amount of warmth.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, repairmen didn't want to use Mullards because they just had such a bad reputation, at least tubes like the 12AX7, for noise issues. And they would go with a Brimar instead. And unfortunately, Brimar didn't have the same production levels as Mullard. So we almost never see Brimars. But the Matsushitas we still can get. It's tough keeping them in stock, but we're
trickling them in and matching them up, and we've got some in the store for you.
Yeah. And they're on sale. They'll be on sale this week and until Friday, when I remember to take down the sale item. And so go ahead and grab them. And the best part of the sale is that we're trying to help people out. So we'll put them on sale in the store, and we're going to allow double dipping. So you can get 2 discounts. So you can go ahead and grab a Cheers code. And talking about a Cheers code, here's some Cheers codes to help you out. And there's a secret code that almost everybody can get. It's pretty easy to figure out what it would be. And we can reach almost everyone around the world with flat rate $20 shipping. And if yours is $150 or more, after discount, the shipping's on us, folks. This is Jim.
And Charles.
Signing off. Cheers, everyone.